SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
When banking starts to feel less personal, you know where to find us. Community Bank. Deep roots, local people, personal banking. Visit communitybank.net. Member FDIC.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy.
Good morning and welcome in. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Today is July 10th, 2026. Happy Friday. Weekend is almost here and we are glad to have you along for the ride. You know that you can always join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. So much happening at C Spire. Don't forget, this weekend is tax-free weekend, and C Spire has their family event that is happening in Ridgeland at Renaissance at Colony Park. Tax-free weekend is better at C Spire. Get the best deals and skip the taxes on any new phone. Shop now at cspire.com or visit your local C Spire store. And this weekend at Renaissance at Colony Park or Colony Highland Park, you can get great savings. They've got family activities, games, tie-dyeing, jump houses, lawn bowling, a lot of cool stuff that's happening. And don't forget that if you're looking for the Connect and Protect, you can do that as well. Parental controls and some training to go along with that. Learn more at cspire.com. C-Spire, customer inspired. Mornings brought to you every day by Community Bank, online at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community. As we roll toward the weekend, it is going to be warm, it is going to be humid, and you got a chance of rain. And it doesn't really matter where you are in the state of Mississippi, that is the case. Corinth, high for you today, 91 degrees with a heat index of 103. Slugburger Festival in Corinth this weekend, low tonight in the mid-70s, mostly sunny with a slight chance of afternoon showers, maybe a thunderstorm mixed in, and as I said, hot and humid. Clarksdale, you've got a high of 94 degrees today, low tonight around 72, sunny with a slight chance of shower or maybe a thunderstorm this afternoon. Very hot with that high humidity kicking in, heat index around 105 in Clarksdale. In Waynesboro, low 90s for your high temperature today, mid-70s for the overnight low. Mostly sunny, slight chance of showers and thunderstorms. Just going to be a good old humid summer day in Waynesboro. And in Woodville, Mississippi, southwestern corner of the state, 92 degrees for your high. An overnight low of about 75. Some rain and some embedded thunderstorms are possible. About a 40% chance, but if that rain does roll in, could be heavy. Watch for some localized heavy downpours along the way. So across the state, hot, humid, and heat indices in the low to mid 100s throughout the day. You've got those scattered thunderstorms popping up all over the place, especially this afternoon. Stay hydrated if you are going to be outside today. Again, it's July 10th. Nikola Tesla was born on this day in 1856. The Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, and futurist pioneered alternating current, AC electricity, along with numerous groundbreaking inventions. He died in 1943. Got to feel like Nikola Tesla would be pretty proud of what Elon Musk has accomplished. Sofia Vergara was born on this day in 1972, the Colombian-American actress, producer, and model known for her role as Gloria Pritchett on Modern Family and Business Ventures. The beautiful Sofia Vergara. Jessica Simpson, pop star, born in 1980. She was an actress, I guess is an actress, and an entrepreneur as well. really rose to fame in the early 2000s with hits like I Want to Love You Forever. Played Daisy Duke in the Dukes of Hazzard remake or the movie as well. John Calvin was born in 1509, the French theologian and a key figure in the Protestant Reformation, maybe the key figure in the Protestant Reformation. He was the founder of Calvinism, passed away in 1564. And finally, birthdays today, Arlo Guthrie, 79 years young. He was born in 1947, the American folk singer and songwriter known for Alice's Restaurant Massacre, the son of Woody Guthrie. My favorite Arlo Guthrie song, none other than City of New Orleans, although it really wasn't his song. It was written by Steve Goodman, and yes, David Allen Coe would like a word. A good friend of mine named Steve Goodman wrote that song, and he told me it was the perfect country. Yeah, this isn't about Steve Goodman right now, though. So Steve Goodman was the songwriter. While at a bar, the bar of the Quiet Night in Chicago, Steve Goodman saw Arlo Guthrie and asked to be allowed to play a song for him. Guthrie begrudgingly agreed to do so on the condition that Goodman had to buy him a beer. And Guthrie would listen for as long as it took him to drink the beer. Steve Goodman played City of New Orleans, which Guthrie liked enough to ask if he could record the song. The song was a hit for Arlo Guthrie on his 1972 album Hobo's Lullaby, reaching number 4 on the Billboard Easy Listening chart and number 18 on the Hot 100. Riding on the City of New Orleans, Illinois Central Monday morning rail. On this day in 553, long time ago, Lady Jane Grey, proclaimed Queen of England. She had a long reign of 9 days before being deposed. In 1890, Wyoming was admitted as the 44th United States state. In 1940, the Battle of Britain begins as the German Luftwaffe attacked British targets. It was one of the pivotal air campaigns of World War II. In 1962, Telstar, the world's first active communications satellite, launched into orbit. In 1973, the Bahamas gained independence from the United Kingdom. 1991 is when Boris Yeltsin was inaugurated as the first elected president of Russia. And in 2015, the South Sudanese Civil War begins with fighting in Juba. That is some of what has happened on this day, July 10th, throughout history. We are in July 10th, 2026. All right, got some news headlines for you this morning. This one's tough. A Lafayette County woman is behind bars after 4 of her children reportedly tested positive for drugs. Nydia Hudson, 28 years old, faces 4 counts of felony child endangerment. Officials say her charges stem from a July 1st document indicating that she and her underage children had illegal substances in their system. Authorities did not specify which drugs were allegedly detected. On July 2nd, Hudson was located at her residence in Lafayette County and taken into custody without incident. The local sheriff's office stated that this was a mess. She was transported to the Lafayette County Detention Center. Hudson later appeared in court and is being held on a $10,000 bond. Authorities did not state who currently has custody of the children, nor did they report any injuries to the youth linked to the substances. The case at this point remains under investigation. Attorney General Lynn Fitch earlier this week joined a bipartisan coalition of 49 of her peers in urging the Federal Communications Commission to strengthen rules that would cut off scammers' access to legitimate and local phone numbers. The attorneys general argue that without that access, scammers would not be able to seemingly legitimately dial phone numbers to hoodwink Americans. The attorney general said this: unsolicited robocalls and robotexts are too often a gateway to scams, and fraudsters are constantly looking to exploit loopholes in the law. We are working hard to protect consumers from these invasive, annoying, and potentially dangerous calls and texts, and we need a strong federal partner to stand strong with us. Attorney General Fitch, amen and amen. How many of these calls have you gotten just this week, or text messages? The texts have gotten about as annoying as the phone calls that go along with them. Mornings is brought to you by Community Bank. Ever notice how some places still know your name? At Community Bank, that's how banking works. We're a bank that knows community because we live here. And when you walk in, you're more than an account number. No matter what your banking needs are, here you will talk to real people who care about your goals. Community Bank, a local bank built on relationships. Stop by your neighborhood location or learn more at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community. A couple of more news stories and then some sports headlines. But when we come back, we will start things off with your Mississippi Lottery update. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Let's do it.
Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back. Mornings with Richard Cross on this 10th of July, Friday morning. Hope you are getting set for a big weekend. If you're a college football fan, you don't have that many weekends left, so you better take advantage of the ones that you've got, whether you're headed to the pool or the lake, you're cooking out, maybe you're just laying low this weekend. We hope it is a great one for you. It's time for your Mississippi Lottery Update, brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery online at mslottery.com. Tomorrow night, Saturday, July 11th, you've got a Powerball drawing. Pretty good one. $457 million is the estimated jackpot, with an estimated cash value of $205 million. And an even bigger one tonight, $604 million up for grabs. That's the estimated jackpot for Mega Millions tonight. The estimated cash value, $266,300,000. Tuesday's numbers on the Mega Millions, just in case you want to look back, 2, 31, 35, 36, 63 with a mega ball of 12. You can keep up with all of the numbers, all of the games, all of the promotions online at the Mississippi Lottery's website, mslottery.com. That's mslottery.com. And don't forget to download the Mississippi Lottery app. It is free for you on your smartphone. The 7 o'clock hour, which comes up about half an hour from right now, is brought to you not just today, but every day by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you're not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call. 601-206-7966 or go online to mwgemployerservices.com. I got one more news story for you. I want to go to this. This is kind of a juicy one. The accounts of the 3 individuals accused of being involved in a $95 million Jackson area federal credit union embezzlement scheme have been frozen. JAFCU is suing its former CEO Lee Bridges and her husband Chad, along with former credit union branch manager Tina Funes. Funes is also reportedly a personal friend of the Bridges family. The trio is alleged to have used JAFCU funds on credit for lavish purposes, including purchasing expensive jewelry, luxury vehicles, homes, both in and outside of Mississippi, with Lee Bridges allegedly being the ringleader. In response to the civil suits allegations, U.S. Judge Daniel Jordan approved an injunction sought by JAFCU to freeze all the financial accounts held by each defendant. The Bridges and Funes will be barred from transferring or withdrawing funds until a final judgment is reached in the case. I've got to go back to 2024. That's when concerns first arise. Investigators with the National Credit Union Administration, a partner that reviewed JAFCU's transactions, found that Lee Bridges had allegedly wired $378,780 to jewelry retailer Tiffany & Company. The transaction, however, was reportedly deceptively altered to have investment banking agent and giant Raymond James as the beneficiary on the transfer. So this triggered further investigation into Lee Bridges' wire activity, which is said to have uncovered tens of millions of dollars in misspent funds. After auditors began assessing the JAFCU president's account activity, she allegedly pivoted to her husband's account as a channel for fraud. Now, Funes' alleged involvement in the scheme entailed her spending more than $500,000, $500,000, on an American Express card issued to her by Lee Bridges. All of the credit card payments were made out of funds from the Federal Credit Union. Houses, jewelry, handbags, vacations, private jets, international houses. I mean, if you're going to go, you might as well go big. $95 million. Those are your news headlines this morning. It is time for your morning sports update. We'll get to that coming up in just a moment, but I want to remind you, Lance wants to remind you as well, that the 14th annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon is in 6 days. Next Thursday, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Every year there are children across Mississippi that need a loving home, and many times those children are found in unimaginable circumstances, and that is why we need your help. You'll learn how Palmer Home for Children serves vulnerable children. It's a faith-based organization that takes no government money. So we need your help. We'll be live from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. from Palmer Home for Children's campus in Hernando, and we'd love for you to tune in, join us, and donate. 14th annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon next Thursday, right here on Super Talk Mississippi. And don't forget, this afternoon, Brian Haydad from Sports Talk Mississippi will be in downtown Corinth for the annual Slug Burger Festival. I wonder how many slug burgers Haydad will eat while he is there. It's one of the most fun events of the year. Music, fun, and of course, slug burgers. Time now for your morning sports update, your daily sports update brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Online at pearlriverresort.com. Pearl River Resort is your home for family fun, casino thrills, and live entertainment. And of course, the Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. Book your tee time online for the Oaks or the Azaleas. 2 18-hole championship courses. Dancing Rabbit Golf Club, part of Pearl River Resort. A lot of Americans have checked out, but the World Cup rolls on with the United States as the host country. Yesterday, France and Morocco. Scoreless until the 60th minute. Kylian Mbappe scored a stunning goal after missing a first-half penalty kick to move level with Lionel Messi in the race for the Golden Boot. That's the award that goes to the player that scores the most goals in the World Cup. It fueled France's win and an advancement to the semifinals, 2-0 over Morocco. Mbappe's 60th minute opener, a curling shot beyond, this is so good. Morocco goalkeeper Yassine Bounal gave France the lead after Bounal's earlier save from his spot kick, and having frustrated France for long periods. Morocco then suffered the double blow of conceding again just 6 minutes later when Ousmane Dembele made it 2-0, or 2-0 if you prefer, for Les Bleus, the French. 2 World Cup matches coming your way today. Spain and Belgium. One today. Spain and Belgium today. Yes, unfortunately, that is the game that the United States would have been playing in. And then a pair of matches tomorrow, Norway versus England and Argentina versus Switzerland. SEC Media Days is the unofficial start to the college football season, and Sports Talk Mississippi will be live in Tampa starting on Monday, July 20th, to get you ready for the biggest event of the offseason, SEC Media Days. Our coverage right here on SuperTalk Mississippi brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Cannon Motors, Mississippi Farm Bureau, and Trustmark Bank. Quick look at your Major League Baseball standings. We are, hard to believe, I guess, past the halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. All-Star break is no longer smack dab in the middle of the season. When you look at the standings right now in the MLB, Tampa Bay leads the American League East by 4 games over the New York Yankees, who have been abysmal as of late. Toronto's in third place. The White Sox and the Cleveland Guardians tied atop the American League Central Division. Out west, it's the Texas Rangers with a half-game lead over the Seattle Mariners. Astros are 2 games back. In the National League, the Atlanta Braves, chop, 54-38 on the year, have a 3-game lead over the Phillies, also 3 games in front of the Miami Marlins. In the Central, it's the Brewers trying to run away with things. They lead by 7 games over the Cubs. Brew Crew 59-34 on the year. And the Dodgers with a dominating lead in the National League West, 14 games in front of the San Diego Padres. Dodgers are 61-33 on the year. Throughout the rest of the show, we've got interviews from you, some of the best of the week. Hope you enjoy these as we move throughout the rest of the morning. It is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi, presented by Community Bank. Online at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community.
Since you're up early, you get the news first. Back to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
Glad to be with you and glad to welcome in our first guest of the week. Robert Johnson, the minority leader in the Mississippi House of Representatives. He represents District 94. That includes Adams, Franklin, and Jefferson counties. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I guess it's a great thing that I'm your first guest on a Monday after the 4th of July, 7:30 in the morning. I feel honored.
I requested you, and so I appreciate you making some time for us. A couple of things we got to get out of the way first. Okay. Independence Day activities. Anything fun that you did to celebrate America's 250th birthday?
Just got together with family. We ate, we drank, we laughed, talked, and watched fireworks. That's the script. That's what we do.
That's a pretty good script. What about the World Cup? Have you been following the World Cup? The United States play in the biggest sporting event in the world?
Hey, I respect it, appreciate it. I can only get through about 5 minutes of it, and then I'm done. Let me tell you what I do notice, though, when I watch it. I'm like, these guys have to be in the best shape of the world. They just never stop moving. They're running the whole time. It's pretty incredible. But I'm just counting down the days of college football. I think we inside 100 days. So that's what I'm doing.
We absolutely are inside 100 days. We're closing in on just a couple of months. So you're not tuning in tonight for the United States and Belgium, even with all the I mean, it's turned into a soap opera.
Oh yeah. I will watch. I will watch as much of that one as I can. I have been following the story. Actually, I've been following, the progress of the United States team, because my understanding, nobody really expected them to get this far. So it's pretty phenomenal where they are. So yeah, I want to see that tonight. I will be watching that tonight. Yeah.
It certainly has been a cool story. Always a pleasure to visit with you. The story in Mississippi that seems to have dominated the time since the legislature finished up and kind of moving toward next year is conversation about redistricting. And it's got lots of layers.
Yeah.
We're talking about legislative redistricting and Supreme Court redistricting, but also congressional redistricting. Do you have a general thought on that as we kind of start down this road?
I've gotten to be kind of pragmatic about politics, because everybody on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, we get caught up in themes, and this is just a theme. There is really no real functional reason for us to do any redistricting. I mean, when you think about it, we went through a very serious redistricting issue, in 22. We did congressional redistricting. We went back and forth. The funny part of this story is the congressional redistricting, because we were trying to create a more balanced districts. We even got Benny Thompson to the point where we say, look, you have enough Democrats or African Americans in your district. Let's try to spread them out. And the Republicans said, no, we don't want any more. They added more African Americans to Benny Thompson's district, and everybody seemed to be happy except Benny Thompson, even though he had a more Democratic and blacker district. But the problem is it takes up almost half the state. Geographically, it's just huge. So if you talk to people intimately in the circles around the Capitol, there's really no stomach for any new redistricting. But politically, theme-wise, publicly, everybody has to be, we got to get this done. There's nothing to do. We've gerrymandered ourselves into polarized Democratic districts and Republican districts. And even though, maybe me singularly, I'd like to see more balance. I'd like to see everybody in a 50-50 district. I'd like to see I'd like the people of Mississippi to be heard. But right now, all we have is Democrats, and you just stick to a theme, whether it's getting anything done or not. Republicans do the same thing. So, what I hear in our quiet circles is that there may be some redistricting on those 3 new districts that Judge Aycock required the state to redo. But other than that, I don't think you'll see much.
So that's congressional redistricting, but with Judge Aycock, we're talking about legislative redistricting, and that affected, that affected DeSoto County and some areas in the Pine Belt. And part of the argument that I've heard for that, and there are people that have said, hey, let's go back to the 2022 maps. The lieutenant governor even suggested that, hey, maybe we ought to start from scratch because those maps were drawn based on race. The gerrymandering part of the conversation is fascinating to me, because some people talk about gerrymandering and they're talking about it from a race standpoint, but that goes in both directions, right? I mean, districts that are gerrymandered to create majority-minority districts, and Republicans are screaming, no, that was based on race, but Democrats are saying, hey, that was to balance things out.
Well, it started out balancing things out. It started out because we 30, 35, 40 years ago, we weren't able to elect the requisite number of African Americans. They weren't, African Americans always voted for white candidates, but nothing indicated that we could get the same kind of treatment. So they said we need to create blacker districts. That turned into, every cycle turned into blacker and whiter districts. And look, people may get mad at me. Democrats were just as guilty of it as Republicans. African Americans were just as guilty of it. Hey, give me more. Republicans, okay, I'll give you more. What that ended up being is, whiter districts and blacker districts. So you ended up with candidates who probably were traditionally Democrats, but they were in districts that became politically polarized because we based it on race. And so they end up, I don't give excuses for people who switch parties, but a lot of it was just a matter of practical decision. Hey, if I can't get elected as a Democrat, I'll run as a Republican. So we end up with super PAC Republican districts, super PAC Democratic districts, and there's enough blame to go around on that.
Yeah. I have to ask you this question. Smoke detector in your office. Can I send you a 9-volt battery? Do you not hear that beeping in your office? Every time I've ever had a conversation with you, we hear that beep. I don't think you even hear it. Do you not hear that every 30 seconds or so?
No. And it's fun. It's funny
I think it's been going on so long that you don't even hear it.
No, I don't. I mean, I had a smoke detector. I took the battery out. There must be some background with my alarm system. I think that's my alarm. It just beeped.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's my alarm system. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time we visit, people comment on that beeping in the background. They're like, can we get him a battery for the smoke detector? I was going to send you one if you needed it.
Yeah, and it's just in my office, but you're right. I need to, in fact, I'm looking at it now. It says replace battery, so I need to do that.
Well, you tell me what size battery it is, and we will send you a battery.
It's not the same one. So I replaced that one. Now I got to replace a new one. Yeah.
You said something that's interesting to me just a second ago, and that is about people switching parties. For a long time, people who politically were probably more aligned with the Republican Party and looked like what we think mostly white candidates would run as Democrats because they said they could not win as a Republican, especially in local races. That seems to have changed. I don't think you have nearly as much of that happening anymore. There are more people that have kind of switched over and run either as independents or Republicans. Why did that change?
Well, because of just what I just described. The district became more polarized. My perspective was a little different. I thought people were running as Democrats, but then they had to, because the demographics changed in their districts, they switched to the Republican Party. But either way, it still boiled down to these packed districts and people doing whatever it took for them to get elected. And a lot of times they end up being switching to Republican parties. People say that they were more inclined to be, they wanted to be Republican, but there was not room for them to run as Republican. Some of them may have been the case, but a lot of them were pretty solid Democrats who switched to the Republican Party because it was too difficult for them to get elected as Democrats because of the numbers.
We had some new laws that went into effect in Mississippi just last week. Is there anything that you thought was significant that changed on July 1st?
The SHIELD Act. I know that this idea that we got a problem with people voting, which there's nothing, no statistics, no research that shows that we have a lot of non-U.S. citizens voting in elections. We just don't. And that particular act, sometimes we create laws to deal with a singular problem, and it becomes so broad and it's trying to capture everything. There could be a problem. It becomes dangerous. The idea that you may end up having U.S. citizens having to show up because they just registered or because they moved or because a woman's name changed and because she got married and her birth certificate is not the same. I think, I just think that is way too much. I constantly do not understand why we want to make it more difficult for people to vote. And think about it. Tell me one case of electoral cheating or ballot fixing. Not one case has been prosecuted in the state of Mississippi. I don't know, but one or two cases have been prosecuted in the country. But we keep creating these laws like we got this huge problem, and we end up hurting our own votes. Yeah.
Quick time out. More coming.
Good morning and happy.
Back to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
Music, that hard rock music, they like it with a lot of flash, but it's still that same old backbeat
Minority Leader Robert Johnson in the Mississippi Legislature, Mississippi House of Representatives, is my guest. It's Monday morning, July 6th, 2026. Glad to have you along on Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank. There's been a lot of talk. Yes, sir.
Can I just say one thing? You brought up the redistricting thing. Just as a general idea, when I first got elected, we talked about roads and bridges, public education, whether or not we had enough money for schools, whether we're going, let's build a new dormitory at Alcorn or Jackson State or Mississippi Valley or Mississippi State, or things that matter to people. Let's see if we can create some jobs or fix the industrial park in Wiggins or something like that. Now we spend so much time on elections, which we don't have a problem with, on whether or not you got transgender boys going to girls' bathroom, which I can't think of one case in the state of Mississippi where that happens. And I mean, the things that matter to people, we're losing population. I don't think it's just because culturally and socially people want to see us do better, but I think people get tired of just arguing about things that they don't care about. And they'd like to see us working on things that they care about. I think young people would like to see us creating opportunities as opposed to what are we going to do about, it's just craziness to me. I just rather, 30 years ago, even though we allegedly were more racially polarized then, we spend more time working on things that matter to people. We don't do that anymore.
Well, isn't that national politics creeping into the state politics level as well?
Yes.
But here, my question to you as a follow-up on that would be, you're a Democrat, and unabashedly so, but when you see what's happening with the National Democrat Party, with the Democratic Socialists that are rolling in, and some of the ideas that are being pushed at the national level, does it become hard for you to sit here and go, yes, I'm a Democrat, when that is the identity of Democrat politics at the national level?
Yeah, but it's not how does that become look, even then, again, 30 years ago, what happened on the national level did not define who we were as Democrats or Republicans on the state level. All politics are local. And I got in trouble with Democrats, with not Democrats, but with a small minority handful of people who said, well, you all don't talk about the LGBTQI or transgender. I said, because there are things that we have that we have to work on as Democrats that take priority over those things. That may be something people want to talk about nationally. It's not here. The whole, elections. We want to make it easier for people to vote. But more importantly, I want to build a new, when I mentioned Mississippi Valley State, I want to create a more inviting environment at a school that's very necessary to the Delta. I want to see the state invest in that. I think that part of the state is incredibly important, and I think that's where we grow from. I think we ought to do that everywhere. But I do think that the national issue, Republican and Democrat, the way the parties project themselves and the issues that seem to be taking priority, they don't have to be ours. The core issues, working people, labor, public education, making sure that we take care of people, make sure they got good health care. Those are Democratic issues as a Democrat that I'm connected to, but I don't have to adopt.
And I think
everything.
those are conversations that are worth having. And you've mentioned Mississippi Valley State and Alcorn a couple of times. The next time you and I visit, hold me to this. We need to have a conversation about the IHL and this funding formula that they've been talking about and performance-based funding. And how so?
Just nutty. I mean, how do you judge a school's worth by the income of the people that graduate from the school? How do you do that? That's one of the parameters. That's one of the parameters.
But schools should be graduating students, and students should be progressing while they're in school. We could be on opposite sides. We need to talk about that in detail.
Yeah, but not to get too deep in it, because I love to talk about it. But the context is, for instance, they brought up Mississippi Valley State. There are more people who go to Mississippi Valley State who stay home and work and contribute to the economy in the state of Mississippi than anywhere else. They said, well, people are starting but not finished. That's because they're working part-time. If you start at Mississippi Valley State, you're probably poor and you're going to school part-time. So it's taking you 5 to 6 years, maybe 7. But you're finishing and you're staying and you're getting elevated in the job that you worked at college, because now you have a college degree and you're staying in Mississippi. You're not flying off to Houston or Atlanta or wherever the hell else everybody goes instead of staying here. So, I mean, I can give you some numbers about that show you how valuable a school like Mississippi Valley is, but not the numbers based on a formula that somebody sitting in a little closed cubicle with a just coming up with some numbers. That doesn't work here. It doesn't work here.
We'll do that more next time. I got to ask you this before we go. There's so much debate about who's going to be in the race for governor on the Republican side. It's been quiet on the Democrat side. Everybody just assumes it's Brandon Presley. Is it just going to be Brandon Presley? Is he going to have a Democrat primary opponent?
We're going to have
opponent not going to be you.
It's not going to be me. It's not going to be me. But well, I don't think the state is ready. But I'm ready. I'm ready for them. I don't know if they're ready for me. But no, we have candidates, and we're keeping it close to our vest. But you're saying there's a lot of talk about. It looks like everybody on the Republican side is running. Just about everybody.
They're going to be a bunch. I appreciate your time as always. Let's do this again soon.
Yeah, Richard. Thank you. I'm looking forward to coming back. Okay.
Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. That is Minority Leader Robert Johnson. We're back with you. 8 o'clock hours next.
Back to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
Welcome to the 8 o'clock hour. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank. When it comes to money, trust isn't automatic. It's earned. That's why Community Bank does things the old-fashioned way. When you come to us, we take the time to listen to you and discuss any questions you have. Whether you're saving, spending, or planning ahead, you'll find bankers who know the community because they're part of it. Community Bank, banking designed with you in mind. Visit us in person or online at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community. My next guest this morning is Tom Marotta. He is CEO and founder of the Spaceport Company. If you want to check out their website, you are welcome to do that at thespaceportcompany.com. I think it is a website that will leave you with questions, but also going, whoa, that looks really cool. Tom, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Richard. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Let's start with the elevator pitch. What is the Spaceport Company?
Yeah, the Spaceport Company, what we do very simply is we launch rockets from ships at sea. The fancy way of saying that is we provide unique infrastructure solutions for the aerospace and defense industries. We operate America's only commercial launch pad ship. And we operate a commercial missile test range at sea in the Gulf of America. We've done 6 launches to date. We have multiple Department of War contracts, and we've got a backlog of operations that we're going to be doing the rest of this year.
All right, so how did this all come about? Let's kind of go back to the beginning and go, okay, what do we want to do? We want to put a boat that you could launch missiles off of, and maybe we'll have some floating platforms where we can do that too. It can't be that simple.
You pretty much hit the nail on the head. It goes back to my career. Earlier in my career, I worked for some aerospace organizations, and part of my job there was to go find enough launch pads to launch a rocket theoretically every day. And so I lived the pain of trying to find cost-effective, reliable, and predictable missile and test range and launch pad access. And so I said, somebody needs to solve this problem. The United States used to launch rockets from ships at sea commercially. Of course, the Navy has been doing it for decades. That commercial capability went away, and so we're bringing it back. I'm sad to say that the Chinese are probably about 5 years ahead of us in this capability. They've been regularly launching satellites to orbit from the high seas for years now, and so we're trying to bring that capability back. I should point out, I'm remiss in saying we're located right here in Mississippi, right here in Hancock County. All of our maritime operations are down the coast. we're very, very pleased and excited to be in Mississippi and expanding here in Mississippi.
So the Gulf is a big body of water. Oceans are big. How far do you have to go out to get to a place where it is both safe and private, maybe, to go through these launch tests?
Yeah, so we generally operate 10 to 30 miles off the coast. We don't have to go that far out.
Okay.
And of course, everything is coordinated with the safety authorities, the Federal Aviation Administration and the Coast Guard. And so, we don't just go off and shoot off fireworks, willy-nilly. It's all very organized and regulated, and that's how we're able to do it safely and repeatedly, relatively close to the shore. 30 miles, in the grand scheme of things, is not that far offshore.
There's got to be something in your background, even before you got into the aerospace world, that pushed you in this direction as a career field. I mean, were you the kid that was trying to figure out how to wire multiple bottle rockets together and get 4 of them so that maybe they'll go higher? Or you're doing something with Roman candles where you're kind of trying to test and, modify a Roman candle?
4th of July was always my favorite holiday because that's when all the rocket supplies became in big supply. I always enjoyed, the bottle rockets and the Roman candles. I was the kid making potato cannons. I was the kid, following the space shuttle program and all of that stuff. So, it's been a lifelong passion. And I have to say our team as well, we have a relatively small but mighty team, and all of us are rocket enthusiasts, and we really enjoy it. We have experts from SpaceX, NASA, Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' rocket company. We have fabrication experts who have built all sorts of things, water towers, rocket ships, and everything in between. Zach Bergman, I want to give him a heads up. He's an Army veteran for 20 years. He's on our team. We have mariners who know the Gulf inside and out. So we have a very, very experienced team that, frankly, they make it look easy. But this is rocket science. It's very dangerous. It's very tricky. And then we're putting rockets on boats, right? We're purposefully setting fire to something on a boat, which you never want to do, and we're doing it safely and repeatedly. So I want to recognize my team.
And deservedly so. So you said testing rockets. Is it testing only, or are there actually satellite launches that are going into orbit off of your rockets that are being launched either from a boat or from these floating platforms in the Gulf?
Yeah. No, everything that we've done are relatively small rockets, and they're almost always experimental rockets. So it's a lot of weapons development. There's a field of research called hypersonic missile technology, super fast missiles that maneuver. This is an emerging area of technology, and you can't just build a new missile test range in the desert, or you can't just build another Cape Canaveral. So the existing facilities are full. And so the problem we're solving is, demand for missile test ranges exceeds supply. So we're building more supply by essentially unlocking the broad open ocean as temporary missile test ranges. And so it's a lot of short range, kind of relatively low altitude. We can launch satellites to orbit. We have the maritime assets available to do that. We just haven't. We're a relatively new company, and so we haven't deployed that capability just yet. But we could.
So you mentioned, you mentioned SpaceX, obviously Elon Musk's company, Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos. NASA's farmed out some of its operations in recent years to private companies as well. What is your customer base?
Our customer base is almost exclusively Department of War or Department of War stakeholders. It's a lot of military development. There are many companies entering the aerospace industry. We're in a golden age of aerospace development in the United States today. Not only are companies building lots of new missiles and weapons, but they're also building lots of satellites. There are thousands of satellites going into orbit. Every satellite needs a rocket, and every rocket needs a launch pad. And like I said, the supply of launch pads is relatively static. So if you're using a launch pad to launch satellites, you need to get different launch pads to launch missiles and do weapons development. And so that's where we come into play.
It's sometimes we see videos of rocket launches, and I hate to say it's ever become routine, because if you kind of look at that through the eyes of a child, you're still taken back to a space shuttle launch. Like, man, that's the coolest thing ever. But they happen a lot now, and we've seen some of the incredible launches that SpaceX has done along the way. But, and I don't mean this in a bad way, the videos and the images that really stick in our minds are sometimes when it doesn't go well. You talked about safety a second ago. You see that rocket that explodes just after launch pad or explodes on the launch pad. How do you avoid that? And maybe that's not even the right question to ask. Have you guys had an incident where you have had a rocket explode?
That's exactly the right question to ask, Richard. But that's always the question we are asking ourselves. And we're blessed. Thank God, so far we have not had an incident. And a lot of that is due to preparation. We always assume it is going to explode. We always assume it's going to go off course. And so we have decades of combined years of experience on our team, and very, very elaborate procedures to reinforce not only the physical deck of the ship to prepare for a potential explosion. So the ship that we're using, it's a former oil field support vessel. It's a very, very standard ship that's been heavily modified prepared to do this in these launches. And so we
Tom,
are very confident. Yeah.
Sure. Let me interrupt you just for a second. We're up against the break. You got time to hang with me and talk a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love
Let's
to.
do it. Tom Marotta, founder and CEO of the Spaceport Company, based right here in Mississippi. They test rockets from a boat. We're back with you right after this.
On your radio, on our app, or on your smart speaker. We're always free. SuperTalk Mississippi, your home for mornings with Richard Cross.
And talking in your sleep doesn't matter where you've been, as long as it was deep.
Good to be with you. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. Some of your questions for Tom Marotta coming in on the C Spire text line. Shoot them to us. We'll try and work them in. 601-879-4395. That's the C Spire text line. C Spire, customer inspired. So we're talking about safety before the break, and I was asking you about whether or not you had an explosion, an incident. You said you have been incredibly fortunate so far, and we're just kind of talking about the processes that you go through to make sure it's as safe as possible. Yet there's nothing that's 100%.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. These are bombs that we're purposefully setting on fire and shooting through the air. I mean, let's call it what it is. This is a pretty risky business. And so the good news is, like I said earlier, we have decades of combined years of experience on the team. And we draw from my experience with the government. For 5 years, I worked in the rocket industry for the U.S. government. Intimately familiar with the safety procedures around conducting these operations safely. But yeah, I mean, once you hit 3, 2, 1, 0 and ignite that rocket, You know, that's when you separate the men from the boys. You get the pucker factor there. And so the best time of any operation is after splashdown and everybody's safe and you can kind of pop some champagne and then get ready to do it again.
How much does it cost to launch a rocket?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not cheap. I'll tell you that. So what we do, where we are in the value chain, you know, if you were going to go buy a rocket and launch a satellite to space, you know, SpaceX, for example, publishes their price. I think to buy a SpaceX rocket, the big 300-foot tall rocket, is something like $70 million. Could put about 10 tons into low Earth orbit. We're in a different end of the market. We're doing more missile testing and smaller kind of hypersonic development, missile development there. And what we do is we provide the real estate. We're not building the rocket. We're not selling the rocket. We're providing the launch pad. So kind of like an airport, you know, Boeing builds the airplanes, but an airport provides the runway. We're providing the runway. And so, you know, it's a different end of the market, but it's not cheap. Let's call it that. You know, we're operating maritime assets. Anybody, you know, in Mississippi, the great thing about being in Mississippi is a lot of people know the marine industry, the maritime industry. Operating a ship at sea, painting, chipping, fuel, crew, insurance, that all adds up. But one of the great things that we have discovered is operating in Mississippi is a very business-friendly environment. You know, this industry isn't easy, but it's a lot harder in other places. So we're very, very blessed and grateful to be operating out here in Mississippi.
So, Tom, if I'm a rocket manufacturer and I have developed a new rocket and I want to do a test launch and I want to bring it to you, this started off in my head as, do I get to press the red button? But it has actually evolved a little bit to be, I hope a smarter question than that. You know, 3, 2, 1, 0. Can I press the red button to make it go? But if I have developed a rocket that is ready to be tested, do I then hand it over to you for actual launch, or am I, as a customer of yours, intimately involved in the launch process and, you know, all the things that I'm trying to measure?
It is the latter. We work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with our customers to build a custom-made test campaign that lets them get the data they need to mature their system. Or if it's a scientific experiment, we work hand in hand with them that they can launch. A lot of rockets do what's called atmospheric science. They don't go all the way up into space, but they go higher than an airplane can go and you know, collect data on the upper atmosphere. And so we work hand in hand with them to make sure that at the end of the campaign, after the splashdown and everything's done, they have the data they need. It's not at all like they hand it off to us and we do it, or
right,
sort of like an airport where you get whatever you want. You know, no, it's definitely a custom-made thing tailored to each operation.
So the spaceport company, if I'm reading correctly, is headquartered in Virginia, but your sea launch hub is in Hancock County, as you mentioned just a second ago. That's where you test and operate. What has it been like integrating into the maritime / military industrial complex that South Mississippi has become?
It's been great, is the short answer. We have learned a lot. We entered this business as rocket guys. We were not boat guys, and we were not Mississippi guys. We scoured the East Coast, basically all the way from Virginia down to southern Texas, looking for a home port for our ships. And when we discovered Hancock County and the coast, you know, Mississippi coast, we knew this was going to be home for us because it's just a very business-friendly environment. But it was still a very steep learning curve, right? The maritime industry is pretty opaque. There's a lot of new language to learn. And so we've had a lot of help from a lot of great people in Mississippi to get that done. And so now we call Mississippi home. Layering rockets on top of boats, on top of the regulations, working with the U.S. Coast Guard. We've had a lot of support with the Coast Guard. Obviously, at the beginning, they were very nervous about what we were doing. And I like to think we have earned their trust here in the Mississippi area.
It's really incredible. We get I think a good question here, Mike in Gulfport. So in your neck of the woods, I'm wondering how they get a boat or barge stable enough to launch without causing directional problems.
Yeah. So we have a proprietary motion compensation technology that we put on the boat. So when the boat is bobbing around on the waves, we can stabilize the launch pad and launch from a stable platform that's on the ship.
You ever considered taking a radio host along for a test launch? Just thinking out loud here.
It's not, not a terrible idea. Maybe we could talk about that offline. A live stream of a launch, something to think about.
It certainly would be.
If Community Bank ever wants to launch a rocket, we'll launch it for them.
There you go. What about competition in this space? Are there lots of other companies that are doing what you're doing, or are you a bit of a unicorn?
I wouldn't say we're a unicorn. There are not a lot of companies doing what we're doing. It's a pretty technical field. We do have some competition. We think imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But our competition really is other military test ranges. So I don't really consider them competition. I think of them more as complementary, because we often operate in military airspace and in cooperation with them. But it's not like there's a wide variety of other users out there. We're the only ones in the United States with an operational commercial launch pad ship.
Wow. How many rockets are you launching in a year?
So we've done 6 launches to date. We've got a backlog on contract this year. I'm just thinking of 4, and we're negotiating for 3 more, hopefully by the end of this year. So
I'm always curious. We've only got 2 minutes left, but when you launch a company, there's this idea of like, all right, how are we successful? And there are different ways that you measure success. It's like, okay, how do we meet payroll? How do we grow a little bit? And then you get to the thing of how do we scale? How do we 10x this or 20x this?
Right.
Is that part of the plan, or is this more of a day by day? Hey, we've gotten to stability, and now let's slowly grow. What does that look like?
Yeah, so we are going to make payroll this month. That's always, taking care of the alligator closest to the boat. Yeah, so that's great. We'll see what next month brings. In terms of scaling the business, we're always thinking about that. There's not a huge customer base for what we're doing, so we're just taking it month by month and hoping that we can continue to grow. The system itself, the ship itself, we can use the similar ships and put our technology on similar ships and do this on the Atlantic, or do it out in the Pacific. I'll give you some breaking news. We are planning our first Atlantic operation later this summer. So maybe I can come back in a couple months and tell you all about that. It'll be the first commercial sea launch in the Atlantic ever.
That's outstanding. And if you need that media representative on board, maybe I'm your guy. Just wildly fascinating stuff. Tom, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you telling us more about the Spaceport Company, and glad to have you here in Mississippi.
Richard, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Continued success to you and your entire team. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV. Sometimes just talking into a microphone feels a little inadequate. Wow, what a company. We're back with you after this.
From the Seabrook, where you come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
One time in my life, and he broke my heart in
C-Spire text line is open to you, 601-879-4395. Tax-free weekend is this weekend, July 10th through 12th, and it's even better at C-Spire. Get the best deals and skip the taxes on any new phone. It's the perfect time to switch or upgrade your device and save even more while you're at it. Plus, you definitely need to check out all the latest deals at C-Spire before they're gone, like a free iPhone 17 Pro Max or free Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra with trade-in. Shop now at cspire.com or visit your local C-Spire store today. C-Spire, customer inspired. Happy to welcome in our first guest this morning. She is a familiar name and a regular guest, and we appreciate her time. Marie Sanderson joins us right now. GOP strategist, former policy director with the RGA. Marie, good morning.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Doing well. I appreciate your time. I hate to start with a heavy note, but you are a Mississippi Gulf Coast resident, and obviously the Nolan Wells story has dominated so much of the headlines, not just on the coast, but statewide. Can you give us a sentiment of what the communities along the three counties on the coast are dealing with and hearing as someone that lives there?
Well, I listened to your segment prior, Richard, and I think you did a nice job summarizing where the facts are on this situation. I am not an expert, and I am reading the same things you were reading. But the community down here is very close. I think you said it correctly. These kids know each other. The families know each other. There are a lot of families that do go to the islands every weekend, but particularly on July 4th, and everybody knows each other. So this is a very somber time on the coast. People are leaning on each other. The circus on social media and the circus around the nation, it's harmful. But I think everybody just wants the facts. They trust law enforcement, and they're leaning on each other. Ocean Springs, I'm from Jackson, and I've moved here 18 years ago, and it has become my home. These are caring people. These are loving people who just want the best for this family and are, clearly torn up by the situation at hand.
Just an incredibly tragic situation all the way around, and we'll try to continue to bring you the facts in this story as they become available. Maine, of all places, has kind of become ground zero for political controversy. I know we're all shocked that Graham Plattner, who by all accounts is not a great person, more bad information has come out about him. There's this interesting dynamic with Susan Collins, the senator from Maine, who the Democrats are trying to knock out of this. She is not a 100% when Republicans vote in the Senate, but Republicans also see the value of Susan Collins because a Democrat in that spot would be a 0%, or at least a very low percentage in terms of voting with Republicans on issues that the right sees as important. What's your take on this race in Maine and maybe the role that Susan Collins plays or the role that Elisa Murkowski plays, Alaska, kind of similar in that the two of them seem pretty comparable in their votes?
These ladies represent their states the way their voters ask them to represent their states. And they are Republicans. A Republican in Maine is not a Republican in Mississippi. And someone who votes with you 80% of the time, I'm quoting my former boss, Haley Barber, not a 20% traitor. I may have botched that, but you know where I'm going with it. And, a vote for Republicans in these states ultimately ensures that we still have Majority Leader Thune, who is very important to maintain a conservative agenda and make sure that we have conservative judges and continue to support the appointment of Trump's cabinet, which has continued to be difficult. Democrats are stalling that. There was a letter that the White House wrote the Democrats and leadership yesterday about how they've asked Democrats to submit names for some of these positions to see if there's a win-win, and Democrats are not moving forward names to the Trump administration to continue filling a lot of these posts in the administration. So again, a vote for a Republican is good for Republicans across the country. Susan Collins, she's been around a long time. Murkowski is too, for that matter. When I worked for the late Senator Cochran, they were in the Senate. They were tough. They have good staff around them. They're smart. They represent their state very well. And Susan Collins is tough. She's a great candidate. I will tell you, though, that it feels a little bit like there was more shoes to drop. And you said this guy in Maine, Graham Plantner, he's not a good guy. I'm a little surprised that it took him this long to ask him to step down. I think you'll see that used in messaging with Susan Collins and try and tie whoever they nominate. They're going to do that through a convention, which is interesting in Maine. I believe there'll be about 600 people in the Democrat Party in Maine who will choose their next nominee. And then for Republicans who are working to support Susan Collins, they have to learn about this person. And you have to define them. And so it's a lot easier to run against someone you know. They knew Graham Plattner. They knew his vulnerabilities. They had a campaign laid out. So, strategists surrounding the senator will need to get to know this new candidate. But she's very good at what she does. She's independent sometimes on her votes for a reason, because that's what her voters in Maine expect her to do.
The conversation around socialism in the United States is growing. We've had some openly socialist people in Congress for a while. Bernie Sanders kind of at the top of the list. AOC generally considered to be in that. But now we are seeing it trickle into local politics, most notably in New York City with Zohran Mamdani. I came across, somebody posted this online yesterday, a quote from the late Russian premier Nikita Khrushchev, said that, hey, 60 years from now, our communism will be in your country, and we're not going to feed it to you all at one time. It's going to come in drips and drips and drips of socialism, and then you'll look up one day and it's communism. How concerned are you or Republicans nationally about this trend of Democrats supporting socialists and the transition from socialism to communism in the United States?
I think we have to be very concerned, and we have to watch it. There was a poll done around July 4th about Americans and how proud they are to be an American. And unfortunately, the number is a lot lower than it used to be. And so I think I think the President Trump does a great job of trying to generate American pride. There is a gap there. The other thing that I think is driving this conversation, we've talked about universities and indoctrination. I think we have to always keep our eye on what our young kids are being taught. And the impact of socialism, that generation. Again, I think the July 4th America 250 had veterans from all the incidents that we've had over the years and gave them Purple Hearts. I believe the gentleman who fought in Normandy was 107 that President Trump had on stage, which is just incredible. We need to continue to expose our. Yeah. It was crazy, right?
It
just
was
mind-blowing.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was. And, we had, my son Thomas is 13, and we have conversations about that. Your grandfather fought in this war. This is what this meant. And if you really reflect on how old our country is, 250, maybe it's because I'm getting old, that is not that long. And we have to celebrate and move forward and teach our children. The last is about the issues that matter right now to the electorate. Our affordability, the cost of living, and the economy. And when you have those issues, it's easy for a socialist agenda to say, well, if we just do it our way, everyone will have the same thing. And history will have to teach our children and others that is not the case. That is not how this works.
There's an interesting juxtaposition in my mind with the poll that you referenced about fewer Americans being proud of being American and patriotism being down. And what we just watched with the United States World Cup, where all of the U.S. matches were played on the West Coast. They were played in Santa Clara, in Los Angeles, and in Seattle. Those are Democrat strongholds, and yet you look up and you see 68,000 people standing and singing the national anthem at the top of their lungs. And you see, 41 million Americans watching these games on television, and it's like there's patriotism that's just dripping out of everybody that you see. And yet you read these polls and you're like, yeah, but there are a lot of people that hate America. It's hard to make those two things kind of dovetail.
It is hard. And by the way, they were singing Country Roads too, which I thought was really interesting in
They
California
were.
as well. The story behind that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's people stand up and cheer. I mean, I think soccer, there's probably a lot of people in those stands who love supporting the U.S. team who might say, but I'm otherwise not proud to be an American or travel abroad or whatever their politics might be. But I think this is important. I think the president and his team are focused on it. There's a lot of legislation being run in states to force the teaching of American history. And I think that's really important. Something I'm passionate about is making sure our kids across the country understand history and in Mississippi state history, how far we've come.
Marie Sanderson is my guest. You got time to hang for a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
We'll continue the conversation after this. What's going on in Iran? And let's peek ahead to midterms and get some thoughts on that as well. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi, presented by Community Bank. Rooted in our community, communitybank.net. We're back with you right after this.
Good morning from the
Where you come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Back with you on MRC on this Thursday morning, the 9th of July. Marie Sanderson is my guest, GOP strategist, former policy director with the Republican Governors Association. Marie, taking a look at midterms. In the Senate, there are, depending on how you count them, about 11 really competitive races. And Democrats need to pick up 8 of those 11 or 12 if they are to take control of the Senate. Most analysts seem to be looking at this and say it's probably unlikely that they win all 8 of those seats to retake control of the Senate. What's your temperature on that as you kind of look at some of these races in battleground states?
Well, you're right on the numbers. There are 11 competitive states, and Democrats do need to pick up some tough races in order to take the Senate. There are a couple of factors here at play we should talk about. First, President Trump's popularity. This is not normal for the president to be less popular, for his what we call approval rating to go down in the middle of year 2. It's quite normal. In fact, he's trending about where President Biden was. So when you ask people, when you go vote for the Senate, are you voting for the Senate candidate? Are you voting against Trump? Are you voting to balance? You get different things. But right now, there are people who are motivated to vote against the president, especially Democrats. And so that is called the intensity factor. And so the intensity factor for Democrats right now is off the charts. It is higher than it's been in a long time. And they are much more motivated to go vote in these elections than Republicans are. So that's a stat you need to look at, the president's popularity and intensity. The other thing we look at are governor's races. We need to hold some states like Texas, where there's now a competitive race. But Governor Abbott is also on the ballot, and he's very, very, very popular, and he has a lot of money. And so in that instance, when you have kind of a toss-up, if you will, and I think we do have to call that race, at least within the margin of error, hopefully Governor Abbott will help with Paxton's race over Tallarico. But again, there are 36 governor's races this year. And so in the past, it used to be when there was a governor's race, there was an 80% correlation between the governor's race and the Senate going the same way. We've seen a little bit of slippage there. We did see some of that change. There were a few states that actually went to the ballot box and voted Republican for their governor and Democrat for their Senate. We've seen a little more independence from voters as of late. But I do think the Senate is going to come down to the wire, and there are a couple of factors we're going to watch as we get to November as to what might swing these states one way or another.
How closely are you watching Georgia? Brian Kemp term as governor, I guess, is coming to an end, and that is a hotly contested gubernatorial race. You've got John Ossoff, who is up for re-election, pretty charismatic guy. Two Democrat senators from Georgia right now, and Ossoff and Warnock. You look across the Southeast, and it's a map that's full of red, with the exception of the state of Georgia, which obviously has metro Atlanta and the surrounding counties that are such Democrat strongholds there.
Georgia has become a purple state. Whether we want to say it or not, it is a purple state. It does matter from year to year, the issues, the popularity of the president. I should say, though, that even though President Trump's approval has gone down, Democrats, if you look at a generic ballot, are not that popular. Americans generally don't think that Democrats have an agenda. And so it does matter about the candidate. I think Ossoff has done a decent job voting independent when he can. He's well liked. But let's talk about Kemp for a second. Brian Kemp, the current governor of Georgia, is very popular. He carries a lot of sway. He's not always aligned with President Trump. That's okay. Right. But I think that he will do what he can to try and move that Senate race from the Dem column to the Republican column. But it is going to be tough. Georgia is a tough state now, and particularly during.
Last thing for you. I have accused myself of oversimplifying this. I've said gas prices at $3.50 a gallon, terrible for Republicans in the midterm. If it's somewhere in the $2.50 to $2.75 range per gallon, that's probably a good sign for Republicans. Gas prices were trending down, but Iran just heated up again, and now gas prices and oil prices are going back up, and the stock market is bouncing lower, at least for a short amount of time. What does all that mean for midterms?
Well, you're a smart guy, Richard. I mean, that's tough. If gas prices go up, then inflation goes up, and it's hard for the economy. It's not what we want 4 months out. A daisier in politics, though. I do know that the president and his team are very focused on these issues. So obviously solving the conflict in Iran is critically important to this. I've told you on your show before, I'm not a foreign policy expert, but I'm hopeful that we can find a solution there. Because it does matter, and the economy is the number one issue to our voters, and we've got to figure that out as we head towards midterms.
Marie, always appreciate your time. Great insight. Hope you have a good weekend.
Thank you for having me. Have a great weekend, too.
Marie Sanderson, GOP strategist, former policy director with the Republican Governors Association. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on Super Talk Mississippi.
Early in one day, a wealthy customer bought the Indian maid. He took her oh so far away, but oh, like to stay.
Mornings with Richard Cross, brought to you by Community Bank. Bank local, bank community. Glad to have you along this morning, and happy to be joined by the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Sean Tindall. He agreed to come on and visit with me and share what he was able to do so about something that so many people in Mississippi are talking about right now, and that is the Horn Island incident from the 4th of July. Mr. Commissioner, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to be here, Richard.
I appreciate that you are safely pulled off on the side of the road. You're not driving and joining us via video. That would not be a good example for the commissioner, so thanks so much for that. What can you tell us? There is a ton of online speculation, whether it's on Facebook pages, on X, on Instagram. There are a lot of people that kind of act like they have information that they don't necessarily have any information, or at least not any that's credible, that's been vetted. What can you tell us at this point?
Well, Richard, let me first send my condolences to the family. I don't know them personally, but I have a lot of friends that have relationships with them and know them, and I can't imagine what they're going through. I've got a senior that just graduated from Gulfport High, is 18. He and his friends remind me a lot of Nolan and his friends, and they go out, they hang out, they do a lot of things together. So my heart is bleeding for the family and the friends of Nolan, who have suffered a tragic loss, and by all accounts was just an outstanding young man with a bright future, and well respected and loved by really everybody that I've talked to that he touched. So very tragic situation. I can tell you, I've grown up on these waters. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up going to Horn Island, going to Ship Island. I've camped on Horn Island. I've swam around those islands. It's very dangerous. I was taught at an early age on the west tips of those islands that you don't swim there because it'll drop from 3 feet, 4 feet to 20 feet in just a matter of a foot, and the currents will pull you out quick. And then I've been on the water. Certified scuba diver for 30 years. Done a lot of swimming, sailing, boating, fishing. Drowning is something that happens regularly out there, and it's a silent killer. People don't see it. It's 30 seconds, 40 seconds, you're underwater, and that's it. So hopefully we can raise some awareness about the dangers out there and teach people to be cautious. Right now, the autopsy report is still pending. The medical examiner at the Department of Public Safety handles that. Dr. Stacy Turner is a board-certified forensic pathologist, which means she's a doctor, an MD certified in forensics and pathology. And in my mind, probably the best medical examiner we've ever had in the state of Mississippi. She's been doing it a long time. She's very thorough and very well respected in her field. And she's going to look through this and see what the autopsy uncovers. And then we'll present that to the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. I've been on the phone with the sheriff, talked to him multiple times, and offered any assistance that we can. But right now, we're really waiting on the autopsy report to be completed and try to get witness statements and evidence from out in the field. I know the Sheriff's Department has put out a notice for folks to reach out. What I would tell folks is when you get on social media and you rant and rave and you intimidate and you create false narratives, there's going to be the possibility that witnesses aren't going to come forward because they don't want to be a part of all that. You think about the young girl that was last reported being in contact with Nolan and what she's had to go through with all the innuendos and things put on social media. Another witness might not come forward after watching that. And that's the tragedy of this situation. We're trying to gather information. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office is trying to gather information. We need witnesses to come forward, and this is counterproductive to those efforts.
The autopsy occurred yesterday at the state medical examiner's office. What is the timeline for when those will be reviewed and cause of death determination will be made? And will those results be made public?
Well, I don't know if you recall, there was a case a couple of years ago out of Meridian, and there's certain aspects of the autopsy report that are available. After that was done, there was a law that was put in place that made sure that some of the aspects of the autopsy report remain with the family and law enforcement remain confidential. So some of it will be made public. The family will certainly have an opportunity to see it, and what they do with it from there is up to them. But it's and really, it's not just what you do in the medical examiner's office at the time they do the autopsy. A lot of times you have to wait for toxicology reports and blood samples and other things that we send off to other labs to get analyzed to come back. And so that's kind of in the stage we're at right now, is waiting for some of those results. And again, we'll get that over to the law enforcement. They can go from there. And I would just encourage everybody not to jump to conclusions. There's really no conclusion to jump to at this point. It's a very tragic situation. And we need time to gather statements, gather evidence, look at what happened, and then ultimately all of this will be made available to the public. And in the meantime, again, what I would encourage people to do is, use this as an example of why you shouldn't leave your friends, why you should stick together. I've talked to my kids about that. And then when you get out on these islands, just being vigilant. It's dangerous. It's deep water. This isn't like being on the river. It's not like being on the reservoir or lake. This is the Gulf of America, and these are barrier islands, and there's a lot of dangerous conditions out there that you need to be prepared for.
Is the autopsy report kind of the be-all, end-all in terms of the investigation? But based on what comes out of the autopsy report, maybe that's the better way to ask this, does that shape what the investigation looks like going forward?
It certainly takes it in different directions. I mean, if it's determined to be a drowning, then that would obviously take it a different direction than if there was blunt force trauma. And there's only so much that a medical examiner can tell you. They can tell you the cause and manner of death. Ultimately, witness statements matter. And I always use the analogy if a body is found laying on the ground outside of a skyscraper. I mean, you've got several options. This person could have been pushed off. This person could have jumped off. This person could have slipped off. It could have been an accident. Could have been a suicide. Could have been a murder. You've got to get some evidence to go along with that to make that determination. The medical examiner can tell you how this person died. It was obviously blunt force trauma due to a fall. But you've got to get some additional evidence to make that final determination as to whether it was a suicide, whether it was a homicide, or whether it was an accident.
And so investigators, regardless of what the autopsy report turns up, will continue their work to try to piece together the events of what happened so that the family can understand and the public can understand, right?
Absolutely. And look, we all want answers, and I know the family does. And if I put myself in their shoes, I would certainly have questions, and I would want answers. And I think all that information is being gathered at this point. Obviously, there are a lot of people that drown out at those islands. What are the circumstances, if that's what it was? How did that happen, and how did he get himself in that situation? And unfortunately, we may never know. I had a first cousin, about 10 years ago, drowned down here in Hancock County. His father, his mother, they still have a lot of questions to this day because he was at a concert, walked through some water, it got deep, and he drowned. Still a lot of questions. So, we're going to continue to do the investigation, try to figure it out, try to give the family as many answers that we can.
It's sad for me to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask it because it's part of the rhetoric that is existing right now. There are a lot of people that have pointed to race because Nolan was a young black man. There are pictures of him with young white friends as well. Is there any reason at this point for you to believe that there is a racial component to the death of Nolan Wells?
I have no reason to believe that, and I don't think anybody would have a reason to believe that unless they're just being racist in their hearts and looking at a picture with a black kid with three white friends. I mean that at the end of the day, I've got teenagers that age, and they've got plenty of friends of all races, colors, and sex, and they love them all if they're their friends and don't pay attention to all that. And so we'll see. I mean, I think the investigation will lead where it will, but there's no indication that there was anything regarding race that led to this unfortunate situation.
Sean Tyndall, Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. I know you've got a lot going on today. I appreciate you making some time for us and sharing with us what you are able to share at this point in the investigation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you.
You as well. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. That is the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. The autopsy for Nolan Wells occurred yesterday. The state medical examiner will go through her process to review the results of the autopsy. You heard Commissioner Tyndall say that parts of that will be made public. The results will be turned over to the Sheriff's Department, the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. The family will be made aware as well. And we'll go from there. That's where we are right now. Tragic situation. Anytime we lose a life, but especially a life is lost of a young person with seemingly a promising future in front of them. Thanks for being with us.
Mississippi. From the heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C., this is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on SuperTalk Mississippi.
There were some blue and sorrow times. Just my thoughts about you bring back my peace of mind.
back with you. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV. Just kind of summarizing or finishing up before we jump to our first guest this morning, Brad White. Let this process play out. You have police departments, sheriff's departments, the United States Coast Guard, Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, all involved in this process. The Wells family deserves to know what happened to their son. This is a young life that is lost and is not coming back. And they deserve answers. But the inherent assumption that those answers come with the snap of a finger and a blink of an eye, and if you don't get the answer that you want or that you expect and get it immediately, that something is wrong, is just wrong. These law enforcement agencies have to be thorough. They want to be thorough. They want to be accurate. And the autopsy report, assuming it is made public, should be very telling in terms of what happened and how this young man died. The sarcasm and the cynicism online does not help, and it makes law enforcement's job infinitely more difficult, as does the presence of someone like Ben Crump, who loves a camera more than just about anything in his life. All right, we'll leave it there for now. We can come back to that if you would like. Mornings of Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Happy to welcome in our first guest this morning, Brad White, Executive Director at the Mississippi Department of Transportation. Brad, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Richard. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
What's going on right now? Let's jump in and talk about some of the projects that MDOT has going and that big old fat new budget that you've got that just finally went into effect a couple of days ago. Have you spent all the money already?
Not yet, but we do have it obligated. We're starting to look at where we're going to put it, and I'll start with the part that you care about and your listeners. The good thing about the way the new money that we'll be receiving that increased our budget to the largest budget we've seen, the good thing about that is the legislature put into law that it's directly tied to our 3-year plan. So 100% of that money goes in some way to the highways around the state. So it will impact projects all over the state. There's nothing else that MDOT can spend it on other than truly where we're increasing the efficiency and building out and improving our system around the state of highways and bridges. So we're looking forward to having that. Starting this July will be the 6 cents, which is about an extra $105 million.
Okay, I was going to say, do you have an estimate of about how much money that's going to be?
Yeah, this would be the 6 cents that starts here. That's about $105 million increase. Next July is when it goes to the 9 cents, which would be about $150 million. And 100% of that will go into our paving program, our maintenance, and the upkeep of the system and rehabilitating the system and trying to eradicate as much as we can the poor roads and highways around the state.
Yeah. What's going on with Highway 80? Or Highway 80 and I-10? Or I guess that's two separate projects.
Yeah, those are, I think you're talking about where build grants were awarded from the Federal Highway Administration, USDOT. Highway 80 received a build grant that will be working with the city of Brandon to do some, I think it's got everything from other types of improvements. It's not necessarily widening the roadway, but other improvements and aesthetics to the system in there that makes it more suitable for downtown areas and areas where there's a lot of people and folks moving. I-10 is another build grant that will be used in the enhancement of that system down on the coast. Would be widening. So we were real pleased to get that. I think they were somewhere around $30-40 million. I don't hold me to that. I don't remember exactly now.
And that was the announcement that came from Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith's office last week.
She and Senator Wicker announced those last week. But those are competitive grants that the federal DOT gives out And I think D'Iberville got one, we got one, and there's another one with Brandon. And so it's going to be a good use of extra federal funds that are outside of our budget that will come in and help enhance the system.
So that does not affect the dollars that you're budgeting for projects that are either ongoing or on the horizon across the state?
No, these are for different types of projects and things, but it's the type of improvement that we like to do. It's a type of improvements that enhances the system, and it doesn't have, because we were able to secure these grants, it doesn't have to come out of our budget, so our budget can continue to go where we intended for it to.
A bit of an engineering question for you, and this is just an observation. I was having a conversation with a friend last night, and they were talking about the Highway 7 expansion that's happening in Lafayette County in North Mississippi, and there's some places where there are new bridges that have to go in. It's like the new road construction part is happening kind of to the west of where the current Highway 7 is. And when you look at a current bridge over a creek or river or whatever, it's kind of at one height, but the new ones appear as if they're significantly raised. Like that's going up, and then you'll have to build the road up to go over the creek and then kind of come back down. And that's happening in multiple places. What's the reasoning for that? Is there a rationale for why it is raised for future construction?
Yeah, well, I'm not an engineer, so I don't let me lead you wrong. My expectation would be is that project is widening of the highway where it can carry traffic more efficiently, carry more traffic. We're building it with today's standards as opposed to the standards that were around when the original highway was built. So I'm sure it's a combination of the realignment, a combination of new standards that things are being built, a combination of it being a bigger highway and the need to broaden it out. So I'm sure there's multiple things that went into effect for that, just to make it fit the design of a bigger highway than what was there originally.
Yeah. In terms of timeline, is that project moving along as it's supposed to?
It's ahead of schedule, actually. I'm really pleased with the work that's being done there. I think most people that drive through there that I hear from comment regularly about how amazing they are to see the progress, as it goes along. So we're real pleased with it. And we're pleased with a lot of the projects we have around the state. I mean, we've got, thanks to the legislature's investment into this capacity program, we've been able to award projects all over the state, from the Tennessee line down to the Gulf Coast. And now we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.3 billion worth of capacity projects like the one in Oxford that are already underway or have been recently completed around the state. Starting this month, we're advertising the I-55 in Madison project. We'll advertise it this month and next month with a September award date for that project to get underway. We'll be advertising.
Now, what specifically is happening there?
That's where we will be adding a lane in both north and south directions of I-55 between Highway 463 and Gluckstadt, and then we'll be building the ramps to that Reunion Parkway that the county built across the interstate.
Okay.
So it will be enhancing.
There will be some growing
system.
pains as that project unfolds, aren't there?
It will be a work zone, and everybody will have to watch it. But the good thing is most of that work that we're going to be able to do in that particular project will be done inside the existing footprint of right-of-way. So there may be some lane closures, most of which would happen at night. But a lot of that will be done on the sides where we'll be adding the lanes and building everything. So hopefully it will not be as disruptive as work zones can be.
Okay. Is there a hot spot in Mississippi where you have a project that is either about to start or needs to start and is very much on the whiteboard in the office saying, okay, this is where we've got to go next?
We've got a big project. It's kind of getting labeled the big fix that's going to be happening right there at the stack on where I-55 and I-20 come together.
Okay.
Where we'll be working with the Federal Highway Administration to repair and fix several of the bridges along that corridor and do other needed improvements. They're about to be at their life expectancy, so it's time to do it. That's the most highly traveled area in the state of Mississippi in that corridor, and so having any type of work that's going on there is going to be something that is going to cause folks to have to really pay attention. Due to that, we're going to be doing a lot of things differently than we normally do, from trying to be able to message to the commuters directly about what's happening, when it's happening. But over the course of the next couple of years, there'll be some work going on there where we'll actually have to shut down different parts of the interstate intermittently to do the work. So it's going to be a pretty major construction project that'll be happening in the most traffic that the state of Mississippi sees. So that's probably the biggest thing that we've had on the horizon or have coming. So we'll be able to talk more about that later, but we're hoping that we'll be able to look at a notice to proceed on that in the coming months by this fall. We're trying to make sure that we get the other projects we have around there completed and out of the way to where we're not making it any more congested than have to be.
Brad Dott, Executive Director of MDOT, joining us this morning on Mornings with Richard Cross. When we come back, we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about part of Brad's previous career and some experience that he has been through.
From the Seabrook. Get the inside track on Mississippi politics. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Loaded up and trucking. Are we gonna do what they say can't be done? We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Thanks
for being with us this morning on Mornings with Richard Cross, presented by Community Bank, online at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community. Brad White, Executive Director with the Mississippi Department of Transportation, is my guest. I said we would switch gears, and we will, but there were a couple of questions, even repeat questions, that came in during the break. One asking about I-55 in DeSoto County and what the status is there.
Well, we've got the improvement and widening of I-55 in DeSoto County are going to be done in different legs. We have the first phase of that that we hope to be ready to advertise by the end of this year and have a contract underway by next spring to have construction started there. The second part of that, and actually the third and final part of that, we're in the pre-construction phases now. We'll begin the preliminary engineering where we look at kind of what the design needs to be, what right-of-way would be needed, what utilities would have to be moved, and the process that kind of goes on behind the scenes to get a project shovel ready. So all of that's underway now as well.
So that's a multi-year planning process?
Yeah, that takes a little time, and it depends on what you get into, like how difficult it is to get the right-of-way. Are we going to have to go through eminent domain, how difficult it is to get utilities moved, how expensive it is to get utilities moved. So there's a lot of different factors that we can't really control that we come into play. That was what I was kind of talking about with the I-55 project in Madison. One of the things that made that a lot easier to move along was we didn't have to move hardly any utilities, and we didn't have to purchase really any right-of-way. Most of the work could be done within our existing footprint. So we were able to kind of move a little quicker with that than we would a normal project.
And then, as routinely the case when we visit, there's a question about Highway 18 south of Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no big plans right now on the board as far as money that's been dedicated to widening it. I know that we do have some rehabilitation projects that will be going through to try to enhance the system and improve the pavement and things like that, but that's all that I'm aware of right now.
Yeah. Brad White, I think there are lots of people that identify you as, okay, that's the commissioner, executive director at the Department of Transportation, and don't necessarily know the road that you traveled to get to this point, or that you were the chief of staff for Thad Cochran in his later years in Washington, D.C. There is a kind of a sad story that's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, and that's regarding the health of Mitch McConnell, a longtime senator from Kentucky who has been either the minority or majority leader since 2004, I think. I mean, he's been in that spot for a long time. His health clearly has declined and is declining. There's been a recent hospitalization. There were some online reports that he's incapacitated at this point. Appears as if there was some cold water that was thrown on that yesterday when some Republican legislators and media members actually spoke with him and talked with him about some of the things that are going on right now. But as someone who has lived through, worked with, managed a situation, even if it's not exactly the same, similar to that, an older elected politician in the waning years of their life, what is that process like?
It's a tough process. First of all, one of the main issues you've got is the United States Senate rewards seniority. That's how all the seats and chairmanships and things like that are given out. So it really incentivizes members that get there to stay there, for states to keep their members there, because that's how they gather influence. And that's how, when you look back through Mississippi's history, going all the way back to Senator Pat Harrison and Jim Eastland, John Stennis, Trent Lott, Thad Cochran, a lot of the influence that we've had in Washington was due to people like them, Jamie Whitten on the House side, that were sent there and were allowed to stay and amass seniority, which gave them the power and the influence to be able to do a lot of things. So I think that's the first thing that you deal with, is it incentivizes individuals to stay there as long as they can, for states to send them there, because that's the way that you build their influence with which you can carry out your duties and best help your state and nation. The situation with Senator McConnell is a little different from Senator Cochran. First of all, going back to that first point I just made, I will always believe if Senator Cochran would have done what he wanted to do, he would have retired in 2014. I think he was ready to. I think he thought it was time to do that. But again, due to the seniority, he was going to be chairman of Senate Appropriations again. There was just this outpouring from the business community and political community around the state to encourage him to run again, which he ultimately did. When Senator Cochran's health failed, he was the first to recognize that it was time for him to retire, and he was ready to go ahead and resign as soon as it became suitable to do so in the legislative calendar, and come home and allow for someone else to take over. Our law in Mississippi allowed Governor Bryant, obviously, that when Senator Cochran retired on March 31st, I think it was April 9th, he appointed Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith to take her place, and then a special election was called later in the year. And Mississippi never went without a senator. I'm told that one of the things that complicates this, and Thad also had about 2 years left in his term. I'm told that one of the things that has complicated this is Kentucky changed their law to where if Senator McConnell, whose term ends at the end of this calendar year, so in 6 months, if he was to retire, their governor is not allowed to appoint a replacement. So they would be without a senator until such time that a special election would be called, and there would be a campaign, and there would be an election, and then someone would come into place when you've already going to have a new senator taking over in January. So that complicates the situation that they're managing there a little bit. But like you said, too, I also think Senator McConnell holds the record as the longest-serving Republican leader in our nation's history. In spite of what others may think about him, I would say that we have a lot to owe him for, one, being the current state of the United States Supreme Court, because it was some positions he took early on in the Obama years that allowed us to get to a place where President Trump had the appointments he had. But through those years, he also became kind of the dartboard, I guess, for all those that hated establishment politics or hated the Republican party, and that's been a sad thing to watch.
As someone who worked as a chief of staff in Washington, can you speak to the way the Senate operates as opposed to the way the House operates? I mean, you mentioned establishment politics a second ago, and there are a lot of Republican voters that think that is as entrenched as it has ever been, with John Thune as the leader, with the reticence to take up or vote for the Save America Act. Why is it that the Senate is operating in the way that it is, as opposed to the way that Mike Johnson runs the House?
Well, I think that is one of the geniuses of the Founding Fathers. When they created a bicameral Congress, they created something where you have the House of Representatives that is supposed to run hot with the passions of the people. You do not enter the House of Representatives unless the people of a congressional district elect you. No governor can appoint, there's no way to enter the House of Representatives unless the people elect you to be there. And it's a complete majority rules, and it runs hot with the passions of whatever is going on in the people's minds of the nation at that given time. The Senate, on the other hand, is supposed to be, one of the Founding Fathers compared it to, while the House is the cup that holds the hot coffee, the Senate is supposed to be the saucer that you pour it in to cool the passions. It's designed to protect the minority. It's designed to slow roll something that may be overly passionate. So it's supposed to provide a balancing act. So a lot of the rules and the things that set up the Senate are just there to make it function differently. I mean, a House member is up for election every other year. So the people get to change out who they want as their representative in the House of Representatives almost any time they get ready to. A senator serves a 6-year term. 100% of the House is up for re-election every other year. Only 1/3 of the Senate is up every other year. So the Senate is designed to serve as a pause button of sorts to make sure that measures are thought through and to make sure that it's functioned. Now, what you've seen over the last few years, unfortunately, starting with people like Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid before him, was some of the Democrats, in my opinion, began weaponizing some of the rules of the Senate in ways that they had never been weaponized before, from filibustering judicial nominations. I mean, Clarence Thomas was confirmed by a Democrat Senate with, I think, like 52 or 53 votes. Had the Senate operated with them weaponizing these different measures back then the way they do now, he would have never been confirmed to go on to the court. So I think the problem that we're facing now is the Senate is you've got some members that have started taking it in directions that have caused for the debate now to be, is it time to try to reorganize the way the Senate works, which is really disheartening to me because I think it would ultimately be a very negative thing for the country.
I'm fascinated by your experience. You got time to hang with me just for a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Brad White, Executive Director at the Mississippi Department of Transportation, former Chief of Staff for Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran, with some insight on the way the Senate operates, what may or may not be happening with Mitch McConnell, and just doing a little remembering. We will continue the conversation with you coming up. It's Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV.
Mornings with Richard Cross. What's up?
Let's get the show going.
Super Talk Mississippi.
Mornings with Richard Cross with you, SuperTalk Mississippi, streaming at supertalk.fm and SuperTalk TV. Brad White is my guest. We talked about highways and byways, roads and bridges earlier this morning, but he has been kind to share some time about some of his experiences in Washington, D.C. When he worked as Chief of Staff for former Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran. Brad, there's so much conversation, especially among a lot of the Republican base, about nuking the filibuster. And Republican senators have been reticent to go down that road. John Thune has said we are not going to do it. It is a protection that we do not need to exploit. But the rationale from a lot of voters is if the Democrats get back in power, it is what they are going to do. They have already told you they are going to do that. So why would you not take advantage while in power? What do you think the rationale is for Leader Thune and for some of the other senators who have stood by maybe more a traditional idea about how the Senate should run?
Well, I think what you would be looking at is dismantling the Senate as we know it. As I mentioned earlier, what the Founding Fathers had in mind was that part of the Congress being the saucer that cools the passions and protects the minority. And I think that when we go down the path of dismantling what it represents as an institution and how it works, then there'll be no protection for the minority, whomever is in it, and sooner or later we're going to be in it. So I think that's obviously the hesitation is we're talking about changing forever the way that Congress works, which, you know, when you look at some of this dysfunction, I certainly can understand why people would feel like it was time to do that. But I would really hate to see that happen, because I just think we're changing forever the way that the nation would function, the way our business would be conducted. And I think that we would sooner rather than later be on the receiving end. And, fortunately, there's always been a threat about that, where the Democrats would say we're going to do it. But so far, there's always been enough traditionalists on both sides of the aisle not to take that nuclear option, because of the fact that the thing about those tables is they always turn.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, for all of the sentiment that when the Democrats get back in power, and they will eventually, I think, whether it's this coming election or at some point in the future, do you think they will go through with it, or do you think that's just rhetoric that is convenient right now?
Well, I haven't worked in Washington since 2020, right. So I don't know that I have a good pulse on what the mood up there is, but I know that the experience that I had, there was always that threat, there was always that type of rhetoric, but there was always enough traditionalists and enough people on both sides of the aisle that recognized what a huge step that would be against the founding of the nation and the way that Congress was set up. That's never been something that was seriously debated or ever more than just a political rhetoric that would be used. Now, that could be different now. I don't know, and I guess if it is, and people believe it is, then we should, that would dictate how you would respond or how you would act for it. But regardless of when it happens, whether the Republicans do it or whether the Democrats do it, I think that it would be something that would ultimately harm the nation in a very significant way.
Do I hear you saying that once it is done, it absolutely cannot be undone? That's toothpaste that you can't put back in the tube?
I mean, I'm sure there's a path that you could put it back, but I mean, I don't believe that would ever happen. I mean, I've never seen us do something and then regress back to something else. So I don't, I feel like if it's done, then we'll be passing the Rubicon. And I tend to be a little bit of a traditionalist, and I always enjoyed the history of the Senate. I always enjoyed the institution of the Senate because of how it functioned. I can remember before Senator Cochran retired, he and Senator Pat Leahy sitting in the ceremonial office of the Vice President. It was right off the Senate floor. And Thad had been the longest serving member of Congress at that time, from adding his time in the Senate with his time in the House. And Senator Leahy had been the longest serving senator. He came to the Senate about two or 4 years after Thad came to Congress. And they were very close friends. Leahy, a Vermont Democrat, Thad, a Mississippi Republican. They served on the same committees. They voted against one another on a majority of the issues, but they were very good friends. And I remember them having a conversation about when did the Senate work its best. And they both remembered it being back in the early 80s when the Republicans took over and Howard Baker and Robert Byrd made a commitment to work together to advance real policy and have real debate. And ideally, we could get enough adults in the room to take us back to a time where people are operating like that and not putting us in a position where we're having to have discussions about such drastic steps as this.
Amen. And yet. And yet. Brad White, Executive Director, Mississippi Department of Transportation. Can't thank you enough for your time this morning. Really enjoyed the visit. And we'll talk soon. Mornings with Richard Cross. More on the way with you right after the news. Mornings is presented by Community Bank, online at communitybank.net. Community Bank, rooted in our community.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.